Good morning. Good morning. President Franklin, stage party, ladies and gentlemen, and men of Morehouse, it is an honor and a privilege to welcome you to this Science and Technology Initiative Crown Forum. I would also like to acknowledge and welcome our viewers viewing this live via the web. We will now have a prayer by Mr. Chavis Jones, the chapel assistant to the Martin Luther King Chapel and class of 2013.
Let us pray. Giver of life and love, architect of mercy, goodness, and grace, as we come to you on this yet another installment of our journey to the crown, we are reminded of how you bridged the gap for the people of Egypt between Pharaoh's bondage and Moses' promised land, and how you bridged the gap between people picking white cotton and a people once again taking residence in the White House. So right now, God, we're asking you to continue to be the God that bridges gaps. Continue to bridge the gap between scientific inquiry and technological advancement. Bridge the gap between growing cancer rates and the development in the field of oncology. Bridge the gap between universal health care and the pre-existing conditions of the impoverished. Bridge the gap between Obama's first-term hope and America's second-term reality. Bridge the gap between federal Pell Grants and loans and the rising cost of tuition. Bridge the gap between the Franklin years and those of our impending president. Continue to bridge the gap between Morehouse's progress and Morehouse's potential. Bridge the gap between our students' pride and our students' scholarship. And finally, God, bridge that gap between new student orientation and commencement day on the Century campus of Morehouse College. For being our bridge over troubled water and for that crown that eternally looms over our heads, we are eternally grateful. Let all who affirm this prayer say, Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I am Dr. Gregory Ford, Assistant Professor of Biology, and I bring you greetings from Dean J.K. Haynes and the Division of Science and Mathematics. Dean Haynes is unable to join us as he's traveling with faculty, staff, and students of the division to the National Abracams meeting, which is fitting for this occasion as an example of the commitment toward not only providing men of Morehouse the opportunity to showcase their talents and interact with leaders and peers in their disciplines, but to guide step by step, hand in hand, through the trials of this ever-changing world. So why the Morehouse College Science and Technology Initiative? Because there's a need. There's a need to create a pipeline of innovative scientists to lead in the development of new technologies and therapeutics to treat conditions that affect our community and the global community. On April 27, 2009, President Barack Obama announced the President's Council of Advisors in Science and Technology. These were leaders in science and engineering who made policy recommendations to the project that were important to science and technology because innovation is the key to an economic recovery. But it can't stop there. As we've recently re-elected President Obama, and as we, the scientific community, continue to create innovation, a new need is on the horizon. This innovation will lead to entrepreneurship, which will lead to ownership, which will lead to a need for business leaders, political leaders, civic leaders, legal guidance, and legal protection of intellectual property. These leaders will need to possess an appreciation for the sciences and the scientific method. That's why we need men of Morehouse to take at least one semester of biological sciences as you matriculate at Morehouse. Finally, I'd like to add an example of this collaboration between business, economics, science, social sciences that I propose. In the audience with us today is Dr. Byron Ford. Dr. Ford is a professor at Morehouse School of Medicine, director of the Neuroprotection, Neurorepair, and Stroke Program, and was recently appointed to the Advisory Council for the National Institutes of Health, NINDS. And he's also my brother. 9 years ago, I was in business. I was a manager for a big box retailer, and Byron was a junior faculty with an innovative idea. He asked me to join him and help develop this idea, which was developing a novel therapeutic for stroke and other acute brain injuries, including traumatic brain injury exposure to nerve agents, toxins, bacterial and viral infections. And it was also to develop a diagnostic tool. From this collaboration of science and business, we've produced over 10 patents, 3 of which are full patents, received funding from NIH, DOD, Howard Hughes Medical Institute, UNCF, Georgia Research Alliance, and private industry for over $10 million to drive our innovations. And we are actively working and seeking licensing partners, which can and will create new revenue path streams for Morehouse School of Medicine and for Morehouse College. So men of Morehouse, there will be other scientists out there, and some are in this room today, who will have innovative ideas, who are in need of partners, who are experts and leaders, who appreciate and will help advance their ideas and innovations. They will need Morehouse men. They will need you. And today you will also hear from one of your own who is a leader in science and technology innovation. And this, my colleagues, is the occasion. So now, we will have a solo by Mr. Mitchell Moffitt, who is a tenor, and he'll be accompanied by Janali Watkins. Mr. Moffitt is class of 2014. Mr. Watkins, class of 2015. And the solo is entitled, "Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child."
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child alone, long way from home. Oh, sometimes I feel, yeah, like I'm almost gone. And sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel, yeah, like I'm almost gone alone, a long way from home, yeah. asking questions when you don't know why. Struggling night, cause you feel alone. Cause the battle you said is a long way from home. Living from our struggles from a day to day. Lord knows he'll help you and he makes a way. And feeling night, cause you feel alone. You can't give up now, cause you've been running too long. Like a motherless child, yeah. Sometimes I feel from a long way from home. Yeah, a long way from
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Morehouse brothers, and all distinguished guests. This morning, I have the great pleasure of introducing a man of distinction and honor, the first Benny Award recipient, a member of Phi Beta Kappa, the 1990 Most Distinguished Alumnus of the University of Miami, the 2008 Distinguished Achievement Award recipient of the Biomedical Engineering Society, and a member of both the Institute of Medicine and the National Academy of Engineering, and the first African American to ever achieve this status. But more importantly, I have the honor and the pleasure of introducing to you a fellow Morehouse man. After graduating cum laude from Morehouse College in 1972, our speaker went on to earn a master's degree in nuclear science and engineering from the Rensselaer Polytech Institute. Then, he achieved a PhD in applied radiation physics from the MIT, and then a medical degree from the University of Miami School of Medicine, after completing a residency in internal medicine at Emory University, and then another in nuclear medicine at the University of California, San Diego. He spent a year as a clinical research scientist with Picker International, the first manufacturer of the MRI machine. And in 1985, he joined Emory as a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Fellow. Over his career, he has served as a professor of radiology medicine at Emory University and a professor of bioengineering at the Georgia Institute of Technology, as well as director of the Emory Center of Magnetic Resonance Research at Emory University School of Medicine. And currently, he serves as the first director of the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering at the National Institute of Health. So without further ado, it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Roderick Pettigrew.
Good morning, Morehouse, Morehouse, Morehouse. To say that it is a pleasure to come back to the house would be a monumental understatement. I am really delighted to be here. I've been feeling the love since I arrived late last night. On the ride over this morning with Brother Good Game, I made that remark to him that I was really feeling great about being back here. And indeed, that is the case. I want to thank Brother Perkins for that kind introduction. And I have to comment that I really was moved by the artistry of Brother Moffitt that he displayed in delivering that solo today. We should see him on one of these shows, America's Got Talent or The X Factor, one of them. You should be there. I also want to thank Dr. Franklin for reaching out to me and this kind invitation to come and talk to you in the Crown Forum. This concept of a Crown Forum is substantial, to say the least. The visual of Morehouse holding the crown above the heads of its students and challenging them to develop and to grow to the point that you can wear that crown is a powerful visual and beautifully sums up what Morehouse is about. The articulation of the 5 wells that President Franklin has offered clearly and succinctly lays out a pathway that, if followed, will have you to grow to the point that you can wear that crown. And I want to endorse the 5 wells of President Franklin. I know that you know them all, and I don't have to go through them. But if you follow those 5 wells, if you strive for those, you'll be well on your way to achieving success. In this forum, I have been asked to, and I'm delighted to talk about science and technology. The title, if we could have the slides, of Science and Technology in Contemporary Society technology, and I certainly operate in contemporary society and doing this on a day-to-day basis as a director of the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering, and I certainly want to bring you greetings from this institute. We call it NIBIB. In talking to you and going over this from a personal perspective, I'd like to conclude with a bit of my own thinking and philosophy about success. I was born in a small town in South Georgia, Waynesboro. Birthed in the same bed that my mother was delivered in. And I was fortunate to have been born into a family where concern for your fellow man was continuously emphasized. I grew up in Albany, Georgia, at a time and in this place, Albany, that was challenging. And challenging for a preteen, which I was, during the height of the Civil Rights Movement. Just 5 doors down from my house was the largest church. It was used as a discussion center for the leaders of the Civil Rights Movement. And there was a lot of activity around the immediate community that I lived in and Albany in general that had quite an effect on me as a preteen. Looking on TV and seeing the kinds of demonstrations and demonstrators that you see here in this image, peacefully lying across the street in front of the courthouse in Albany, contrasted with the violence that erupted, in contradistinction to the nonviolent approach that we're all familiar with. Really hit home. The person that you see there with the bloodied shirt after being clubbed in the head as you can see, with the bandage on his head. Shaveen King. I knew Shaveen King. He was in my community, and I went to school with Shaveen King Jr. Many of the people that I grew up with lived this kind of challenge on a day-to-day basis. And with the kind of visuals that you see here, the juxtaposition of this nonviolent approach that you see on the right, the violence on the left with the dog there taking a bite out of this individual's posterior with the billy clubs, was traumatic for a young 10-year-old. And I noticed that many of the students that I went to school with, who were older than me, 17, 18-year-old students, would participate in these marches. I wanted to, my parents wouldn't let me, but they would go to these marches and then disappear, and I wouldn't see them. So at the age of 10, my calculus, in terms of my life expectancy, was that about 18 and it was over. I didn't expect to live past 18. I thought that I would die at 18. This is where I am now. This is the website of the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering, again, NIBIB. And I do have the privilege of being the inaugural director of this institute, a member of the National Institutes of Health, where the goal is simple and straightforward, and that's to make all of us live longer and healthier lives, to cure disease. Our institute focuses on science and technology. And in contemporary science, this approach is a team approach. It involves individuals with expertise in disciplines that are scientific and disciplines that are non-scientific. Here are members of the NIBIB team, not all of them, but a good number of them, taken about 5 years ago, and they represent all of these different areas. We have experts in communication, experts in ethics and legislation, in business and hiring policies, in human resources, information technology, and the like. About a third of this group are such individuals who are not scientists, and then we have scientists as well that span quite the breadth, from basic science and biology, cell and molecular biology, to engineering, physics, mathematics, computer science, and chemistry. This image here is a copy of the cover of a business journal. And I show this because I think it also underscores that in the contemporary world, there is a convergence of fields that was alluded to by Dr. Ford in his introductory remarks. I, as a physicist, am on the cover of a business magazine talking about the economics related to imaging. Now, what happened? How did I get from the challenges of Albany, Georgia, to the fantastic opportunities at the NIH and NIBIB? Well, at the age of 18, when I thought my life would be over, I actually had my 18th birthday at Morehouse College. This is a brochure that one of my physics major colleagues, Lindsay Lewis, discovered a couple years ago and faxed to me. And here is Lindsay here on the left with Dr. Mayo, who was the chairman of the physics department at that time. And here you see the four amigos, I called us, the sole four physics majors at Morehouse then: Ernest Jupiter, Marion McCord, Lindsay Lewis, and myself. Now, it's interesting to note here that at that time, these three amigos had fully developed their afros, and mine was a bit in transition. It was kind of evolving, but I want you to know that by the time I graduated in '72, it was out there, fully developed. Also notice the fashion statement the pencil behind the right ear. I have mine. Ernest Jupiter has his. You can't see Marion McCord, but I'm sure he's got one. And Lundsey is probably taking his pencil down and using it to write. But I want you to know that when I went over to Spelman, and I made many trips to Spelman, I lost the pencil, took the pencil down. We used to call it the yard. President Franklin remembers that terminology. I don't know if it's changed at all. But no pencil behind the right ear when you're going over to the yard. This preparation prepared me for the educational journeys that you heard about and the position that I have now, where we use science and technology in this contemporary science, focusing on convergence of fields and using diverse expertise to come together to improve health. And I'd like to illustrate to you several examples of this. This is a demonstration, as the slide shows here, of the world's first non-invasive treatment for essential tremor. You've seen individuals, particularly in the elderly population, who are unable to hold a steady hand, and they just shake like this. There's a treatment for that. The treatment, though, involves using a scalpel, entering the brain, planting electrodes, and stimulating it. This is the first physical treatment that is physical as opposed to medicinal without invading the body. It employs instrumentation that you've shown here, magnetic resonance imaging device, commonly known as MRI, but outfitted with this fancy ultrasound driver, as you see here, and illustrated in this diagram that in combination does the following. It does three things. It identifies a target site responsible for the tremor. It then uses ultrasound beams, which are harmless, and does that in sufficient and large enough numbers, 512 to be exact, arrayed around the skull of the patient, precisely focused in on the target area, confluence at this area of these individual beams that have low enough power that they're not harmful to the brain, but at the point of confluence, adequate power to raise the temperature of the tissue to the point of destruction. Ablation is called. And the third thing is using MR in a temperature-sensitive mode to determine when the temperature is elevated to the point of therapy and monitor that it is not happening in the surrounding tissue. This requires precision engineering, precision science, and to be a precise scientist, you need to be excellent. Here is a video interview with the first patient treated in this way without a scalpel.
I live in Fort Valley, Virginia. The tremors I have had for approximately 10 years, and they progressively got worse. But now everything has worked out fine for me. Before I had the procedure, I could not write. I could not eat without spilling stuff on me. I quit going to public places, church socials and everything. I took medicine to start with, and every 2 or 3 years they changed the medicine because, it didn't work any longer. So finally, after 10 years, my doctor in Winchester contacted University of Virginia. They contacted me, and I came down, and they started a series of tests, and which led up to the procedure that I just went through. And Dr. Lau started, giving me the 3 options, and I took this option. I didn't want the deep brain stimulation, and I'm just glad it worked out for me, and I hope it works out well for other people, because it will change the way you do things. golfer. I'm able to eat without spilling everything on me. I'm able to write and be able to read it later.
Thank you. So now here's another example which merges physics with biology and does it in such a way to develop a device suitable for low resource settings. That is, could be used around the world globally, even in areas where you don't have power, to identify precancerous and cancerous cells. This developed meant by Rebecca Richards-Cordham and her team at Rice University, shows this optical needle, as is shown here, developed in such a way to have sufficient magnification that you can see these cells immediately with subcellular resolution and identify those that are normal, shown in the bottom left of this bottom right quadrant here, versus those that are abnormal, specifically identifying the nuclei of cells, which are large in cancer, relative to the remainder part, the cytoplasm of the cell. This development has been and is being deployed globally, as you will hear.
My name is Richard Conoy. I'm a program director at NIBIB. The problem Rebecca Richards-Cordham is trying to address is how to non-invasively characterize and diagnose precancerous and cancerous cells.
We have developed a battery-powered, low-cost fiber optic microscope that allows the user to place the fiber probe on tissue and image the cells with subcellular resolution. And what it allows you to do is to identify precancerous lesions at the earliest stage when they are most amenable to inexpensive treatment. The biggest challenge in developing this microscope was to get the technology into a package that was sufficiently portable and robust and battery powered to be able to be used in settings that might lack wall power and other necessary infrastructure. I had the opportunity to visit an HIV clinic in Swaziland a couple of years ago. And the wall of the clinic had all these health posters attached to it. And one of the posters was designed to inform HIV positive women about the risk of cervical cancer and the importance of cervical cancer screening. And so these women who are at risk, they're seeing educational materials. So I asked the nurse at the clinic, how many pap smears do you do here to screen for cervical cancer? And the answer was 0, because they don't have the infrastructure in place to support taking the smears and analyzing the smears and reading the smears and then helping women who are at risk by treating them early. And instead what happens is women go undetected until very late stages. So with this technology, you can take this microscope and you can touch it right onto the suspicious area, and right at the point of care, you can have a diagnosis with confidence that it is an accurate diagnosis and enable immediate outpatient therapy.
So this is being used now in China and Botswana, as you see, and I want to quickly then advance to this slide that makes the point that in contemporary society, this convergence of fields and team science is the most effective way to achieve this goal of using science and technology to improve health. The example here is this team from Stanford that demonstrates gender and ethnic diversity, but also diversity among fields. We have a PhD in bioengineering, master's level mechanical engineer, a medical doctor, and a business person, all of whom have come together to address this problem of a person who has chest palpitations and pain. And the question then arises of whether or not this is due to cardiac arrhythmia. So typically what is done is you're outfitted with this device that monitors the heart records that over 24 to 48 hours, and then the doctor analyzes that recording. They reason that this could be substantially improved by developing what I call a smart Band-Aid here. This would be a device that you place here, do the same type of recording, have this recording done internally, take this off, mail it in as you would with Netflix, is their idea, and be analyzed later. That was a concept with their initial drawing. Now is a product. We mentioned Mr. Ford, Dr. Ford mentioned entrepreneurism. They've taken this idea from concept to product, is now being commercialized, and you can see it here. This kind of approach, this team science approach, was underscored by Kwafi Draza, who you'll see in just a second, at the Celebration of Science event. This was a major event. I'm just going to pause it for a second. That took place earlier this year, over 3 days in Washington, sponsored by Faster Cures, 1 day at the NIH, where the whole exercise illustrated for the nation the impact of science and scientific discovery on health. Kwafi is making the point here of team approach to science.
We need engineers and we need physicists in order to unlock this future. If we're going to unlock this future, we need mathematicians and computer scientists so that as we're getting these images and we're getting these signals, they can tell us what they mean. And we need policymakers to wrestle with how to integrate these approaches into our larger healthcare delivery system. If we're going to unlock this future, we need teachers, we need private industry, we need community advocates, we need patients, and we need their families. Ultimately, we need you.
So at this point then, going in the wrong direction, I'd like to conclude with 2 slides. And this is my personal perspective on steps towards achieving the stature of being able to wear the Morehouse crown, making a difference in the world. And here are 10 things that I'd like to review with you. Vision. In vision, the biblical proverb, where there is no vision, the people will perish, is so true. If you read any number of the books on the habits of very successful people, listed in all of them is that a successful person has a vision of what he or she would want to achieve. So vision is critical. In vision, believe. We've all heard it. What the mind can conceive, the heart can believe, and you can achieve. Believe and have confidence and really go after it. The Boy Scouts had it right in this regard. Preparation. Prepare, prepare. You just cannot succeed without preparation. And one of the most famous speeches of all time was just one sentence, 5 words, Winston Churchill. Never, never, never give up. Persevere. Go see for yourself. Now, I have to tell you about this. This was from my father, his admonition to me. This admonition that has stuck with me since the day he told me this, I was 12 years old, resulted from a brief trip that I made with him. At the age of 12, he was starting to let me feel the steering wheel in a car, in an effort to train and develop me to be a safe driver. So one day, he said, come on, son, I got to drive out of town for a few miles and go to the state patrol office outside of Albany, several miles outside Albany, and renew my driver's license. So hopped in the car, the 2 of us started. We're down this lonesome country road, a few miles outside of Albany, and coming from the direction we're heading in happened to be his best friend, Chad. So Chad comes up, the 2 cars meet, they stop. Chad goes, "Hey, Pet, where are you headed?" You going to the state patrol office? My father said, yep. Got to go renew my driver's license. Chad said, don't worry. I just went there. Save yourself a drive, time, and effort. It's closed. So he continued on into town. My father took off, continuing in the direction of the state troop patrol office. And after a couple of minutes, he was still heading in that direction. I turned to my father and I said, where are you going? He said, son, I'm going to see for myself. We continued to drive. We got there, and sure enough, the state patrol office appeared to be closed, but my father went in, renewed his driver's license. It was not closed. He came out, and he said, son, when something is important to you, when it makes a difference to you, go see for yourself. People will tell you what they think. They'll tell you what they believe. They'll have the best intentions. But if it matters to you, go see for yourself. That has stuck with me to this day, and those who work closely with me know that that's the way that I operate. Be reliable. If you're not reliable, if your word is not your bond, it's over. Do what you love, follow from your strength. You've heard this many times. Pursuit of happiness. We're all pursuing happiness. Fortunately, we tend to be good at things that we love doing. As you encounter crossroads, forks in the road, metaphorically speaking, in life, decisions, be guided by what your strengths are. Seek help. Do not work in isolation. That is a challenge that I think we as minorities have and have had. Do not isolate yourself. Seek help. No one succeeds alone. And there is a corollary to this, and that is helping others. There is this circle. You get what you give. There's not only intrinsic value in helping others, but you will discover that by helping others, you will also gain. I consider this to be somewhat of a subcircle of the bigger circle of life. Seeking help and giving help. And no list would be complete without the exhortation from Benny Mays that we're all familiar with. His powerful statement that it is not failure, but low aim that is sin is so true. Not on my list is being a genius. Another way to state this is the way that Thomas Edison put it about being a genius. He says that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So I'd like to conclude with the thinking here of Aristotle, the philosophy of Aristotle, and the education given to us on this topic of excellence and the role that choice plays in excellence. Excellence, he observed, is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, the high aim that Benjamin Mays talked about, sincere effort, the perseverance, never giving up that Winston Churchill talked about, and intelligent execution. Now, by this, he explains what he means, the intelligent execution, in saying that it represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. Men of Morehouse, choose well. And if you choose well, you will develop and grow to wear the crown that Morehouse now holds above your heads. Thank you for your attention.
Very quickly, gentlemen, if you will remain. Alumnus Pettigrew, you have distinguished Morehouse College through your ascension to a national position of influence and thought leadership. Morehouse College is proud of you, and you stand in a long tradition of young physicists at Morehouse, nurtured, who have gone on to help change the world. Other leaders in our science, technology, engineering, and math arena. Walter Massey, Louis Sullivan, David Satcher, Delmar Edwards, Asa Yancey, and on the list goes. Think of it, young men, in the 1970s, we were on this campus, and he was there with a pencil in his ear. I was around here with a political science book, and now he directs a national center at NIH. One of us became the president of the college. That's the way Morehouse rolls. And that's what I see in each and every one of you. Unassuming today, but one day we will look at you. We will look up to you. So, gentlemen, take seriously these lessons and these opportunities. Before Dr. Greg Ford comes and we sing the hymn, I also want to urge all of you, be more attentive to the prelude and postlude organ renditions provided by the brilliant Dr. David Oliver. We receive a free concert, and this is an opportunity many colleges do not have. Many do not have extraordinary pipe organs. So that's a detail I want us to embrace in Crown Forum. Another, I've noticed in the past couple of sessions, some of our young men standing at the door. Brothers, I'm not sure why that is. I know that some are guests who are visiting on bus tours and you have to depart. We understand, that's fine. But for men of Morehouse, when you attend Crown Forum, come in, take a seat. Do not stand on the back wall. Now, we'll pardon it for today, but going forward, let's not do that. Finally, gentlemen, I want to remind that many of you are seniors applying for graduate school and employment, and this applies to every one of you. Do not prepare and send an application, even if online, without having another pair of eyes proofread your work. We want you to be well written, and there are times when our brains simply self-edit. We don't see our mistakes. Please allow someone else to look at your work before you hit the send button or before you print and mail. There are other things we'll say at another time. I want to thank you for your patience. We ran over a bit today, but this has been an extraordinary presentation, Dr. Pettigrew. Let's thank our alumnus once again, Dr. Greg Ford.
I just have one announcement prior to the reading of the hymn. This Sunday is the Renaissance Worship Service, which is featuring the final presidential message from Dr. Robert Franklin, class of 1975, and the 10th president of Morehouse College. It will be held on Sunday, November 11th at 3 o'clock in the Martin Luther King Chapel. At this point, I'm going to represent the provost's office and strongly suggest that men of Morehouse attend this activity. But beyond that, this is a celebration of the leadership of Dr. Franklin. This will be the last opportunity for you to hear Dr. Franklin speak as the president of Morehouse College, though I'm sure we will hear his strong message and hear his words as we walk the halls. So at this time, we will prepare for the singing of the hymn. Please stand.